Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shibishaka Nivitamsha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Tinamine Shri Varsavanavi Devi Dayitaya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Dayane Prabhave Namaha Madhur Ujvala Premadya Shri Rupanuga Bhakti Da Shri Gora Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namastate Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virudapa Apasiddhanta Dvantaharine Namo Gora Kishoraya Shakshad Vairagya Murtaye Vipralambara Sambode Padambujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sachitananda Namine Gora Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gora Virbhava Bhumestvam Nirdesta Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Sri Jagannathayate Namaha Panchakalpatarabhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patittanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Premapadayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namne Guru Chuse Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakam Namami Bhakta Saktikam He Jayatam Surator Pangur Mama Mandamater Gati Matsarva Swapadam Bojo Radha Madana Mohano Divyad Vrindaranya Kalpajumadaha Shimad Ratnagara Simhasanastito Shimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prestali Bihi Sevyamanav Smarami Shiman Rasa Rasarambi Vamsivata Tatastita Karsan Venuswaner Gopir Gopinatak Striyestrana Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sidvaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Srimad Bhagvatam Grantaraja Ki Jai. We're continuing in the second canto, 9th chapter, and verse 34. Today I'm going to talk about the book called Dialectic Spiritualism, and because it's going to touch on the subject that we're studying, that is these 4 nutshell verses of the Srimad Bhagvatam. So we've covered the first one, and we're on the second one of the nutshell verses. But in this discussion that takes place in Dialectic Spiritualism, and it's about the philosopher George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, born 1770 and died 1831. So he was like 61 years old when he died. Okay. So he is an extremely famous philosopher and I guess some kind of scientist, and you know, his philosophy influenced a lot of people, but if you go through this whole discussion about him, you'll see how you'll understand how to be a good preacher. This was a question that someone asked yesterday, or I talked about yesterday, and this is an example, a quintessential example of how to become a very expert preacher. And not only by what Prabhupada said, but how he said it, and what was the basis of everything that he said. So that's why we're going to do a little tangent today, and discussed this one philosopher, and Prabhupada's disciples, Hayagriva and Shamsundar, are presenting the philosophy of Hegel to Prabhupada, and he is critiquing it. And when Hegel says something correct, he says yes, and when he says something not correct, he corrects him. But the whole way that Prabhupada corrects is what we have to learn, the technique that he uses. So, Shamsundar Das. Hegel sought to synthesize other philosophies to arrive at the truth, and in so doing, he concluded that everything that exists is reason. That is real is what is real is rational, and what is rational is real. So, Srila Prabhupada, this means that he wanted to arrive at the absolute in whom there is no duality. That is Krishna. Krishna says, Paritranayam sadhanam vinasaya chaduskritam dharma samstarpanataya sambhavami yuge yuge. In order to deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to reestablish the principles of religion, I appear myself millennium after millennium. Bhagavad-Gita 4.8. He comes, meaning Krishna comes to earth to protect the devotees and kill the demons. Although he actually did this, we should not think that he is partial. When he killed the great demon Putana, for instance, Putana attained a position like Krishna's mother, Yasoda. Because Krishna is absolute, there's no difference between his loving Yasoda and killing Putana. Whatever he does is good, be it killing or loving. The two opposites are reconciled in him. The Sanskrit word for this is viruddhartha. Sambandha. Viruddhartha sambandha. So, basically, what is he doing? He's bringing together two opposite things. I mean, he, not Prabhupada, but Krishna, is able to bring together two seemingly opposite things. Why? Because of his absolute power. Even his killing is good. This is a very significant philosophical point about Krishna consciousness. So, the question was, the Shamsundar says, Hegel sought to synthesize, bring together. That's why the word sambandha is used in Sanskrit. It means to bring things together. He wanted to synthesize other philosophies to arrive at the truth, and in so doing, he concluded that everything that exists is reason, and what is real is rational, and what is rational is real. Well, that second part there about reason and rational, Prabhupada will talk about that more in depth later on. But the idea of synthesizing other philosophies to arrive at the truth, in other words, you take from other philosophies this point, that point, whatever is truthful, and you make it into a whole package that's truthful. Okay? So Prabhupada says that, he quotes this verse, Paritranaya sadhanam, that's the Bhagavad-Gita 4th chapter, 8th verse. Now, what does that verse have to do with, how does that relate to answering this question? Well, Prabhupada says, this means that he wanted to arrive at the absolute truth in whom there is no duality. That is Krishna. So, what is this absolute truth? That is Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in whom there is no duality. So, no duality means if you killed someone or if you love someone, it's the same thing. Now, in the material world, if you kill someone and if you love someone, it's not the same thing. You would not kill someone that you love. But in Krishna's case, because of his absolute power, he can kill someone or he can love someone. It's beneficial in every sense of the word. So when he killed the great demon Putana, for instance, Putana attained a position like Krishna's mother, Yasoda. Because Krishna is absolute, there's no difference between his loving Yasoda and killing Putana. Whatever he does is good, be it killing or loving. The two opposites are reconciled in him. So that's what, when somebody wants to synthesize other philosophies to arrive at the truth, they're not going to be able to do it. But Krishna can, because he has absolute power. And the Sanskrit word for this is Virudartha Sambandha. Shamsundar Das. Hegel saw that his predecessors had become so increasingly abstract in trying to find out the nature of substance that they had reduced substance to nothingness. Srila Prabhupada, this is due to ignorance. That is called virasa. When one cannot understand the nature or form of God through speculation, out of frustration he says, oh, there is no God. Brilliant point again by Prabhupada. Shyam Sundar. Hegel's predecessors analyzed an object into smaller and smaller parts until they arrived at a non-entity. Prabhupada. The fact is that the absolute cannot be divided into parts. In Bhagavad-Gita it is stated, Nainam chindanti sastrani, nainam dahati pavakaha, na chainyam kledayantya po na sosyati marutaha. The soul can never be cut to pieces by any weapon, nor can he be burned by fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by the wind. Bhagavad-Gita 2:23. What a brilliant thing to say. Brilliant answer by Prabhupada. It is possible to cut a material thing into pieces, but it is impossible to divide a spiritual being. A spiritual being is inexhaustible. Well, that means whether it's the jiva or whether it's Krishna or any incarnation or any expansion of Krishna, you cannot divide it into smaller and smaller pieces. But a material thing, you can keep dividing it until you come up with nothing. The Mayavadis think that since the Absolute is all-pervading, he has no form. But this is incorrect. The Absolute can maintain his form as he is and yet expand himself. Krishna says, Mayatatam idam sarvam jagat avyakta murtina. By me, in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. Bhagavad Gita 9.4. Krishna has three features. Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavaniti, Sabhyate. One Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagvatam 1.2.11. The impersonal, localized, and the personal. So you have the impersonal concept, Brahmajyoti, the localized concept, it's Krishna's expansion as super soul, and you have the personal concept, which is Krishna's original Shyam Sundar form, from which all other things emanate. Unless we come to understand this science, it is very difficult to know the forms of the absolute truth. One who is incompetent, who has a poor fund of knowledge, concludes that the absolute truth is niraktara, void. But this is not so. So here, this is called deductive reasoning. Spiritual deductive reasoning, not material. There's a big difference between material deductive reasoning and spiritual deductive reasoning. Prabhupada is answering every question by his disciples who are trying to present Hegel's philosophy. He's answering them point by point with Shastric evidence. That's called spiritual deduction, or parampara. Parampara are the original statements of Krishna, and the same things repeated by pure devotees. So as long as we stick to the parampara, or deductive system of knowledge based on the a priori truths of the Vedas, we will not make a mistake. and we'll be able to correct other people's mistakes. And that's exactly what Prabhupada is doing here. Shyam Sundar. Hegel wanted to reverse the trend from abstraction to concretism. Concretian. In other words, go from being abstract to concrete. He believed that every phenomenal object has its relationship with the whole, which is reality. So this is Hegel, right? To understand reality, we must examine all objects and relate them to the whole and to each other. Prabhupada. This is our process. So Hegel says something that Prabhupada agrees with, but he gives a much deeper dimension of what is meant here. The whole is Krishna, and everything is related to Krishna. So Hegel says something theoretical, but because Prabhupada hears this, he relates it immediately to the supreme absolute truth, rather than something lesser than that, which is what Hegel will do. Although what he said here is very true. He says, to understand, Hegel says, according to Shyam Sundar, to understand reality, we must examine all objects and relate them to the whole and to each other. Prabhupada, this is our process. The whole is Krishna, and everything is related to him, or to Krishna. Because we see everything related to Krishna, we do not artificially renounce anything, but try to utilize everything in the service of Krishna. So this is spiritual deductive reasoning. If everything is in relationship to Krishna, and if that's the way we see things, then we should learn how to use everything in Krishna's service. This is pure rationality. Although the Mayavadi philosophers say that everything is Brahman, their process is neti-neti, rejecting this, rejecting that. Not this, not that. In this way, the Mayavadis say that Krishna and his worship are also Maya. So, you see how ridiculous the Mayavad philosophy is. Our philosophy is that everything is a manifestation of Krishna's energy. The energy and the energetic are one. Narada Muni says, Idam hi Vishvam Bhagavan Ivetaro Yato Jagat Sthana Nirodha Sambhava Taddi Swayam Veda Bhavams Tatapi Te Pradesa Matram Bhavata Padarsitam. This is Srimad Bhagvatam 1.5.20. It's a very important verse that Prabhupada often quotes in scientific discussions. The Supreme Lord Personality of Godhead is himself this cosmos. Cosmos means the whole universe. And still he is aloof from it. From him only has the cosmic manifestation emanated. In him it rests, and unto him it enters after annihilation. Your good self knows all about this. I have given only a synopsis. So, this is Narada Muni explaining to Vyasadeva, 1st Canto, 5th Chapter, 20th verse. Prabhupada continues, the whole universe is Bhagavan, Krishna, but it appears to be separate. How it is not separate can be understood through Krishna consciousness. Ordinary men think of Krishna and non-Krishna, but there is no non-Krishna. That is illusion. Everything is Krishna. Okay, everything is Krishna, but Krishna is not everything. This is Achintya Bheda Abheda Tattva. The absolute truth is simultaneously one and inconceivably different. So, this was Prabhupada's answer to the question. Hegel wanted to reverse the trend from abstraction to concretism. Let's see. Everything from being abstract to being concrete. Contrition, concretian. It's hard to pronounce that word. I have to practice that. But anyway, it means going from to change the trend from things being abstract to things being concrete. He believed that every phenomenal object has its relationship with the whole, which is reality. To understand reality, we must examine all objects and relate them to the whole and to each other. And Prabhupada says this is our process. But the way Hegel is presenting it, there's no Krishna in this explanation. He just talks about a whole. And that's whole is W-H-O-L-E. It's not H-O-L-E. So, if you're just hearing something, you could make that mistake. So you would think, oh, whole, that means a big bang. That means a big bang from a black hole. No, it doesn't mean that. It means whole, like everything related to the whole of everything, or to everything in the universe. So Prabhupada said, this is our process. The whole, again, W-H-O-L-E, is Krishna. That's the difference between Hegel and Prabhupada. Prabhupada has a much higher concept of what the whole is than Hegel. And but Hegel said something that is, in a general sense, correct. So Prabhupada doesn't debunk everything Hegel says. And when he says something that apparents or is coming close to the truth, Prabhupada accepts it and takes it directly to the truth. We should learn this technique that Prabhupada is using here. Shyam Sundar, for Hegel, nothing can be separated from the spiritual whole because everything is related to it. For Kant is another German philosopher, phenomenon is the mode in which things in themselves represent themselves to the individual. So here we go. This is philosophy verbiage, and this is where people get confused. Because the philosophers, most of them, not all of them, but most of them, don't relate things back to Krishna. Therefore, they use this type of very circular and very obtuse language. So if you read what Kant says, phenomenon is the mode in which things in themselves represent themselves to the individual. In other words, there's no Krishna involved in the process. Srila Prabhupada. It is explained in Bhagavad-Gita that Krishna has two energies, the spiritual and the material. His spiritual energy is described as superior, and his material energy as inferior. These designations are given for our consideration because we cannot understand otherwise. But the fact is that there is only one energy, the superior spiritual energy. When this spiritual energy is covered by ignorance, it is called material energy. The sky is naturally clear, and we can normally see the sun. But when there are clouds, we cannot see it. Since the sun is there, when we cannot see Krishna or understand him, we experience what is called the material energy. The fact is that there is nothing material because everything is Krishna. So it's repeated the second time. He says, previously he said, because we see everything related to Krishna, we do not artificially renounce anything, but try to use everything in the service of Krishna. And again here he's saying that the fact is that there is nothing material because everything is Krishna. Very important point. We only see things as material because we don't see the connection it has to Krishna. So therefore, we describe things that there are two things, material energy and spiritual energy. But when we come to a higher understanding, we understand that even the material energy is spiritual, because you cannot destroy it. And the scientists know this too. They talk about the conservation of matter and energy. It used to be only the conservation of matter. There was a scientist, a French scientist called Lavoisier, and he did experiments, and some people before him also did experiments, to show that matter is never destroyed. It just keeps changing from one form to another. Just like you freeze water, it becomes ice. You thaw water, it becomes water again, a liquid. You boil the liquid, it becomes like a gas or vapor. So nothing is ever lost in nature or in matter. And then when we go to E equals mc squared, then we understand that there's a conservation of matter and energy. So because energy can be transformed into matter, and matter can be transformed back into energy. So therefore, now it's called the law of conservation of matter and energy. Both are eternal. What is not eternal are the forms that matter may assume by combinations. Those forms are temporary, but the matter itself, or the energy, is eternal. Even the scientists admit that through their theory of the conservation of matter and energy. So Shamsundar Das, Hegel says that objects themselves are the spirit, expressing itself in objective nature, whereas Kant maintains that the spirit expresses itself through objects. There is a distinction made between the spirit within the object expressing itself and the spirit as the object. Well, we're talking about two German philosophers, and some of the things they say may be true in a general sense, and some of the things they say are untrue completely. So let's see how Prabhupada answers this question by Shamsundar. And instead of talking about Hegel, now he's bringing in Kant, which is another philosopher. Srila Prabhupada, the object as it is spirit. In one sense, the sunshine is not the sun, but at the same time, it is not different from the sun, because it is the sun's heat and light. Therefore, our philosophy is achintya beda abeda tattva, simultaneously one and different. All these objects are actually spirit, but if we have no sense of Krishna, we consider them to be material. So, the main big point that he makes here, and then it says some more too, it's a very long answer. It goes on for 2 pages. But this is the hint here. He says, all these objects are actually spirit, but if we have no sense of Krishna, we consider them to be material. And in the previous answer that he gave, he says, these designations, meaning material energy and spiritual energy, material energy is inferior, spiritual energy is superior. These designations are given for our consideration because we cannot understand otherwise. But the fact is that there is only one energy, the superior spiritual energy. When the spiritual energy is covered by ignorance, it is called material energy. The sky is not, now he gives an example. The sky is naturally clear, and we can normally see the sun. But when there are clouds, we cannot see it, since the sun is there. Still the sun is there. When we cannot see Krishna or understand it, we experience what is called the material energy. The fact is that there is nothing material because everything is Krishna. So in the same way, he says, all these objects, because Shamsundar is talking about how Hegel sees objective nature and how Kant sees subjective nature or objects, objective nature or objects. So Prabhupada, in answer, he says, all these objects are actually spirit, but if we have no sense of Krishna, we consider them to be material. Sometimes people criticize us for using material devices like dictaphones, typewriters, and airplanes, but we reply that these things are spiritual. If they are used for our sense gratification, they are material, but if used in relation to Krishna, they are spiritual. It is the consciousness that is important. Whoa, big point. Rupa Goswami says, Anasaktasya Vishayan Yatarham Upayanjitaha Nirbande Krishna Sambande Yukta Vairagyam Uchite. Prabhat Chikataya Budhya Hari Sambandi Vastuna Mumukshu Bihi Pratyago Vairagyam Falgu Katyate. One is said to be situated in the fully renounced order of life if he lives in accordance with Krishna consciousness. He should be without attachment for sense gratification and should accept only what is necessary for the upkeep of the body. On the other hand, one who renounces things which could be used in the service of Krishna under the pretext that such things are material does not practice complete renunciation. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.255 and -256. Prabhupada. Everything has its relationship with Krishna. Rejecting everything as false is artificial renunciation. So that's the Mayavadis. Our method is to renounce things for our sense gratification, but accept everything for Krishna's satisfaction. Krishna says, Mam Chayovi Bicharini Bhakti Yogena Sevate Sagunam Samatityaitan Brahmabhuyaya Kalpate. One who engages in full devotional service, who does not fall down in any circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. Bhagavad-Gita 14:26. As soon as we engage fully in devotional service, we are immediately spiritualized. Hey, that is what we're aiming, we should be aiming to convince our children of, that they should be engaged fully in Krishna consciousness, then immediately everything is spiritualized. And I maintain that most of us fail as parents to do that. Because we're still influenced by the material conception of life. But because of that, we're not really pushing our kids to be fully Krishna conscious. On the other hand, we're submitting them to mundane education and mundane professions in the material world. When we are in devotional service, the spiritual quality of everything is revived. In truth, everything is spirit, but it is covered by our material consciousness, just as gold may be covered by mud. If we cleanse the heart, we immediately understand that things are spiritual. In material consciousness, we conceive of ourselves as Americans, Indians, men, women, and so on. But when we come to our spiritual consciousness, we realize, I am Krishna's servant. Thus we understand that we are spiritual. These material conceptions are like dreams. When we are dreaming, we may think that we are this or that we are performing so many acts. But when we awake, we understand our real identity. Because we are part and parcel of Krishna, we have no duty other than to serve Krishna. When this consciousness comes, everything is spiritual. This is one of the most amazing statements I've heard in a long time. Of course, I may have read this before, but it didn't strike me in the same way before. But everything Prabhupada just said is the absolute truth. And if we can understand just this 1.5 pages of absolute truth, we can live the rest of our life in Krishna consciousness. Harivilas. In Philosophy of Religion, this is a book that Hegel wrote. Hegel writes, God is a living God who is acting and working. Religion is a product of the divine spirit. It is not a discovery. Religion is a product of the divine spirit, semicolon. It is not a discovery of man, but a work of divine operation and creation in him, God. Prabhupada says, yes, it is very important to understand that a man cannot manufacture religion. We define religion as the orders given by God. As stated in Bhagavad-Gita, yada yada hi dharmasya gyanhir bhavati bharata abhyutanam dharmasya tadatmanam sijamyaham Panitranaya sadunam vinasaya suduskritam dharma samstar panartaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Again, he quoted this verse. He quoted this second verse, Panitranaya sadunam, in the first question, answer. But now he quoted both of them together, Bhagavad Gita 4.7 and 8. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharata, and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself in order to deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to reestablish the principles of religion. I appear myself millennium after millennium. Bhagavad Gita 4.7-8. This is religion. Religion rests on the orders of Krishna or God. And if you strictly follow Krishna's instructions, you are religious, pious, and transcendental. If you defy Krishna and manufacture your own religion, you are asuric and demoniac. Demoniac, yeah. Shamsundar Das. According to Plato and Kant's philosophy, now I don't know why he's bringing them up, because he's supposed to be talking about Hegel. According to Plato's and Kant's philosophy, these temporary objects are representations of an ideal. This table, for instance, represents or expresses the ideal table, but it is not the ideal itself. So I don't know why he's deviating, but anyway, Prabhupada doesn't reject it. He answers. We also say that this material world is a perverted reflection of the spiritual world. It is like a mirage. Sridhar Swami, this is Sridhar Swami in the Rudra Sampradaya. It's not the modern Sridhar Swami. This Sridhar Swami appeared before Lord Chaitanya, but he's often quoted by Prabhupada and Vaishnavas, Gaudiya Vaishnavas. It is like a mirage, Sridhar Swami said, that is due to the actuality of the spiritual world, that this illusory world appears to be true. In other words, there is an absolute truth in the spiritual world. And whatever appears in the material world is a perverted version of that absolute truth. But because the original thing is absolute truth, even the illusory thing appears to be true because it's a function of the absolute truth. Although, Prabhupada says, although the entire material creation is but a perverted reflection of the reality of the spiritual world, people are enamored by it. People take this to be a real table, a real body, a real society, a real happiness, and so on. Shamsundar Das. Hegel would say that these are genuine externalizations of the reality, that this is a real table and that these are real objects. It is not that they are images of the real, but that they themselves are real. So now, Shamsundar brought up the question of Plato and Kant's understanding of what is real, what is not real. Prabhupada explains what is real and what's not real. And now Shamsundar gives Hegel's opinion of what is real and what is not real. Srila Prabhupada, what does he mean by real? For us, reality means that which does and will exist. If this is not the case, it is not real. Na sato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sata, ubayor api dishtonatas tvanayos tattvadarsabi. He quotes 2nd chapter, 16th verse of Bhagavad-Gita. Those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the non-existent there is no endurance, and of the existent there is no cessation. This seers have concluded by studying the nature of both. Reality refers to that which exists eternally. This table exists temporarily. Therefore, it cannot be classified as reality. It is like a dream or hallucination because it is temporary. We cannot say that a dream is real, although in a dream, everything appears to be real. Whoa. So what he just did was debunk what Shamsundar claimed is Hegel's understanding of what is real. And Shamsundar said, Hegel would say that these are genuine externalizations of the reality, that this is a real table, and that these are real objects. It is not that they are images of the real, but that they themselves are real. So Prabhupada says, wait a minute. What does he mean by real? For us, reality means that which does and will exist. You know, that something that is acting or performing a function in this world and will exist eternally. If this is not the case, it is not real. Okay, now this is getting very interesting because in other places, Prabhupada and Krishna consciousness philosophy will say that although something is not eternal, you can't say that it doesn't exist. So there is temporary existence of the table in the material world. So if you say, well, the table doesn't exist, well, I can take the table and hit you over the head with it and convince you that it does exist. So, but is it real? There's a difference between something that exists and something that is real. Real means it exists eternally. But the table in the material world will not exist eternally. It will eventually disappear because the whole material nature will be reabsorbed into the body of Mahavishnu. So, therefore, although it exists temporarily, you cannot deny that, but it does not exist eternally. Therefore, it is not a real thing. It is a temporary thing. Real would be something that is eternal. So this also refers to science. I've always said that the real definition of science is something that is eternally true in all realms of reference. So that is Krishna, and that is the spiritual world. So that is science. That is real science. And this fake science that's being offered to everyone today as theories about things, and many of those theories are wrong. They're not true. And even if there's a theory that has some relevance to it, it's not eternal. So therefore, one is being taught things that are not actually scientific, but they're using the word science, unfortunately, which is misleading. So now Shamsundar says, so those who are, the Prabhupada is saying, those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the non-existent there is no endurance, and of the existent there is no cessation. This seers have concluded by studying the nature of both. Reality refers to that which exists eternally. This table exists temporarily, therefore it cannot be classified as reality. It is like a dream or hallucination, because it is temporary. We cannot say that a dream is real, although in a dream everything appears to be real. What a brilliant answer. Shamsundar Das, but isn't there a table on the spiritual platform, an absolute table? Srila Prabhupada, yes, in Krishna's abode there are tables, chairs, all kinds of furniture, eternally existing, but these things are manifest here only temporarily. Shamsundar Das, which is correct? Does the spirit express itself in this object, or is it that the spirit is this object? So now he's presenting 2 points of view, one by Hegel and one by Kant. Okay. Srila Prabhupada. The object is an expression of the spiritual energy. Whatever is manifest is the energy of Krishna. But one energy is eternal and another energy is temporary. That which is manifest temporarily is material, and that which is manifest eternally is spiritual. Okay, so Shamsundar hears this and he says, so, in that sense, can you say that this table is made of spirit, but at the same time is not? So Shamsundar is really pressing the point. He wants to get an answer. Srila Prabhupada, originally it is made of spirit in the sense that Krishna is the whole spirit. And because it is Krishna's energy, it is factually Krishna. You may make images out of clay. You may mold pots and bricks. And they may be manifest temporarily as pots and bricks. But originally, they are clay. And when they are destroyed, they will again merge into their original condition. There are three conditions: the formless, the condition, and the form. The formless condition, the form, and again merging into the formless. In Srimad Bhagvatam, Krishna tells Brahma, Aham evasam evagre, nanyat yat tad asat param, paschad aham yad etachcha, yo vasisyeta sosmi aham. So this is the first verse of the 4 nutshell verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, where Krishna says, it is I, the personality of Godhead, who was existing before the creation, when there was nothing but myself, nor was there the material nature, the cause of this material creation. That which you see now is also I, the personality of Godhead, and after annihilation, what remains will also be I, the personality of Godhead. Srimad Bhagavatam 2.9.33. So Krishna existed in the beginning of the creation. He maintains the creation, and when the creation is annihilated, he continues to exist. This is his answer to Shamsundar, who said, so in that sense, can you say that this table, this material table, is made of spirit, but at the same time is not? So now Shamsundar says, after hearing Prabhupada's answer, Prabhupada gives the example. He says, it's just like he says, you may mold pots and bricks out of clay, and they may be manifest temporarily as pots and bricks, but originally they are clay, and when they are destroyed, they will again merge into their original condition. There are three conditions: the formless condition, the form condition, and again a merging into the formless. So in Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna tells Arjuna, it is I, the personality Godhead, who is existing before the creation, etc. Shamsundar. Therefore, the Mayavadis would say that this table is Maya. Prabhupada. They say that it is Maya, but we say that it is temporary. Shamsundar. but there's also a spiritual world full of form. Srila Prabhupada, yes, but the Mayavadis do not know of this. What is the source of these forms? The Vedanta Sutra states, Janmadasayata, form comes from the original source. These forms that we see here are not eternal forms. They are imitations, perverted reflections of the eternal forms. A reflection is not eternal. Shyam Sundar, Hegel says that these forms are not eternal, but that the interaction of forms is an eternal process. Srila Prabhupada. A mirage, so he went off subject a little bit here, but anyway, a mirage is neither factual nor eternal, but there is factual and eternal water. Otherwise, how could one have a conception of water? Shyam Sundar, but if the universe is rational and everything has a purpose, this temporary form is also spiritual because it has some kind of purpose. Prabhupada, yes, we are utilizing everything for Krishna's purpose. Our proposal is to make the best use of a bad bargain. Shyam Sundar, but what if a person doesn't know the purpose? Is the object still spiritual? Prabhupada, yes. Whether a person knows or does not know, the fact is fact. We have only to receive knowledge from one who knows. All objects are spiritual, but one who does not have knowledge does not have the eyes to see the spirituality. Shyam Sundar, then is God's plan unfolding itself everywhere, whether we understand it or not? Prabhupada, yes. He reveals himself in Bhagavad-Gita, and he sends his representative to unfold his plan, to make his plan work. The essence of things, in other words, to explain the plan of God, not to make it work. God makes it work, but to explain the plan of God. The essence of things is spiritual, but our imperfect vision makes things material. Shyam Sundar, Hegel believes that everything has a purpose, that the whole universe is rational, and that it's unfolding under the direction of reason, the spirit of the Absolute. Prabhupada, certainly, only rascals think that there's no purpose in life, that everything is a result of chance. Shyam Sundar, for Hegel, in order to understand this reality, we must examine interrelationships of things. Prabhupada, we are also teaching that the origin of everything is Krishna, and Krishna's energetic expansions constitute everything. Parasya brahmana saj jata veda sehavyavat devanam purushanganam yajnena purusham yajati. This is Srimad Bhagvatam 5.20.17. O fire god, you are a part of the Supreme Personality Godhead Hari, and you carry to him all the offerings of sacrifices. Therefore, we request you to offer to him the sacrificial ingredients we are offering to the demigods, for the Lord is the real enjoyer. And then Prabhupada says, physical existence is heat and light, and these energies emanate from Krishna, the original light. Everything material and spiritual is composed of heat and light. One who has eyes to see that which is spiritual can see. Okay, so you see how this discussion is going on, but Prabhupada is not letting the, let's say, unclear or somewhat obtuse statements made by his disciples as pertaining to the philosophy of Hegel or Kant or whatever. And he's making sure that his disciples understand that the real conclusive truth is whatever is in relationship with Krishna. And anything that is not in relationship with Krishna is imaginary or it's illusory. So that is Prabhupada's technique. And it's not something made up. It is what's called spiritual deductive reasoning. So different types of ways to know things. There are different pramanas. The highest pramana, the highest way to know if something is true or false, is spiritual deductive reasoning. What Hegel and Kant and other philosophers use is a type of inductive reasoning. They see a lot of different things. They try and recognize a pattern in what they see. Based on that pattern, they make up a theory. And their theories, some things might appear to be true, or because they have some kernel of truth in them, and some things are patently wrong because they have no reference to anything that is true. So their way is hit and miss. But if you use spiritual deductive reasoning, which means you begin by the statements made by Krishna himself in Bhagavad-Gita and statements made by Krishna's pure devotees in Srimad Bhagvatam about Krishna, then you deduct from that. Then you will always be in the realm of the truth. That's not what Hegel and others are doing. They don't accept the Vedas as a priori truths. They consider them like ordinary books, or just like any other book, like the Bible or the Quran, or Buddhist writings or whatever. So if we begin with the a priori truths of the Vedas and we deduct, then we can understand what is the truth and what is not the truth. And that's exactly what Prabhupada is doing here. He's giving these verses, and then he's relating them, and then he's seeing if what Hegel says or Kant says or any of these philosophers, if it comes close to what is being said in the Bhagavad-Gita, then he's accepting it, and then taking it to its fruition, to its ultimate conclusion. It has to be related to Krishna. That's what this verse says. Aham eva sam evagre. It is I, the personality of Godhead, who was existing before the creation, when there was nothing but myself, nor was there the material nature, the cause of this creation. That which you see now is also I, the personality of Godhead, and after annihilation, what remains will also be I, the personality of Godhead. 2.9.33, Srimad Bhagvatam. So Krishna existed in the beginning of the creation. He maintains the creation, and when the creation is annihilated, he continues to exist. So, therefore, Krishna is everything. Everything is not Krishna, but Krishna is everything, because everything is made of his energies. And therefore, nothing is independent of Krishna. So once we accept that as a priori truth, then we can examine the statements of these different scientists and philosophers and see if they have some truth in them or no truth at all in them. If they have a little bit of truth in them, we can help them correct it to the absolute truth by Krishna consciousness. If they have no truth at all, then we have to reject what they say. Okay, so what time is it now? Okay, so we'll stop now. Are there any questions? We'll continue with this tomorrow, because this is teaching us how to convince other people of the truth of Krishna consciousness, or the perfect truth of Krishna consciousness. If we learn this technique, now of course you're going to have to understand Bhagavad-Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, or at least how Prabhupada uses certain verses of Bhagavad-Gita and certain verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. Then you'll be able to convince other people of Krishna and Krishna consciousness. Haribol. So there was one question yesterday. I'm not going to answer it now. I will answer it tomorrow. That was written to me. But are there any questions now? How many people?